Hi everyone, welcome to Dataverse Academy. In this video, we'll be focusing on file to raw, notebook, and logging framework. And now we'll move to the first part, which is creating a notebook, which will move the data from file section to raw. So it's inside this folder, ingestion notebook. You can create this folder and you can move your notebooks to this folder. So first one is file to raw. So let me just quickly open this. Before deep dive into this code, I'll explain what exactly I'm doing here. In file to raw, first we are passing parameters. So parameters will be like here you can see uh, source location from which we are going to read the data. What will be our archive location when we are going to move the data to the archive folder. Then we have system, which is Coupa, and here we'll receive the table name. So right now, these values I have hard coded just to show you what are the values which we'll receive in case of every table. So here I'm just showing you for transaction table. Then we'll receive our file name. So how you are going to receive those parameters, I'll explain that. Then file format, delimiter, then raw schema, and we'll have Lakehouse name, which is this one, then target tape schema, and then monitoring schema and our monitoring table. These are few parameters which we are going to receive, and from where we will receive those parameters, let me explain. So if you remember, we have done some entry in the config table. So inside that we have done all those things like what is my file name, what is my file type, what is the file delimiter, what is my table name, uh, what is my raw schema. So that kind of information we have done it. So what we'll do, we'll create a pipeline, and from that config table, we'll do a kind of a lookup, and using that lookup, we'll pass those value to our notebook. Okay, as a parameters, all those values. Once those values has been passed as a parameter, we can use those further. After that, we'll check whether that file exists or not. Once that file exists, we'll load that particular file to a raw table. Once the load is done, then we'll archive it. If the file doesn't exist, we won't do anything. We will simply exist that no file to load, like some kind of a remark we'll have. After all this, we'll do the logging. Okay, so this is on a high level what we are doing in a file to log. So at the top, you can see I'm importing some functions like call function, literal function, when is an monotonically increasing ID, input file name. So these are some functions which are required. Then some types like struct type, struct field, then boolean type. Then I'm importing vpackage, and then notebook utils, and from notebook utils I'm importing ms spark utils, which will be required to check whether the file exists or not, or to archive the file. Then date time, this is the uid which will be used to generate the runtime id for our you can say uh, a pipeline which we will be used in our notebook. So here you can see these are some parameters: source location, archive location, system, table name, file name, delimiter, lakehouse name, and which will be a target schema for a table for this table. Okay. Then monitoring schema for our pipeline monitoring table. And these are some variables which I've created. So if you remember earlier, we have created this shortcut. So this is the path of this location which is inside our files, like files, source location, which is LQM lending. Okay, so right now I need to change it to LQM lending. Okay, and this will be LQM archive. And one thing you need to note, you need to convert this tab to a parameterized type. So how you can convert it? From here, you need to click on toggle parameter cell. Then it will make it as parameter type. After this, I'm creating like this file name. File name will be transaction, and this asterisk will be used in case if you have multiple files, and this is the file format. Okay, then we have source location from which we will read the file. So this is the path of that those files which exist in that location, and then we have archive location as well, which is this one. After this, I've created this particular function, and in this function what we are doing, we have some variables like row count, target row count, and uh, assigning default value and remarks no file to load. Then this is the raw schema of our raw table which we are going to create in our raw schema. Then this is the raw table name, full raw table name like Lakehouse name and target schema and system and underscore table name. So this will create like LQM Lakehouse dot raw unders dot Coupa underscore transaction like this. Then we are listing all the files which are exist in LQM lending location into this all files variable list. After this, we are kind of creating a CSV file list of that particular file. So it might be a scenario we will have multiple files here, like for transaction, transaction line, accounting, and all that. But at one moment, we'll be interested in one file type. So let's suppose in the parameter, I'm passing the information of transaction only, then I'll be interested in the transaction files, right? So this will hold all file types, all file names. So from that, we need to just pick only transaction types. So here you can see if the file name is matching with my transaction, put those files inside the CSV file. And if this is not null, it means we have the files of transaction here. So at the top you can see I'm passing transaction, and if my lending location contain multiple files, which is like transaction, transaction line, transaction accounting, customer, item, all those files. This will hold that particular, and I need to just pick only transaction types. Okay, and then if we have transaction file available in lending location, then we'll check the format. So our framework will be our framework will be used for CSV and Parquet as of now. You can enhance this framework in future according to your need. So here we are reading the file using Spark. Before going further, if you are not aware about the PySpark, what I'll do, I'll put the link of the PySpark code in the video. Then you can go through that and try to learn the PySpark first, then come to this video. Then here you can see spark.read.format and then options, delimiter, then schema we are specifying, then we are reading the file which we need to read, like we are specifying header because in our file headers are true, then we are reading that particular file. After this, there are few columns which we need to add in each of the table. First is row number. So let's suppose our source file contains 100 records, then we'll have 1 to 100. Then system file sys file timestamp. So let me show you the file timestamp. Here you can see YYYY and then time. So here we are simply getting that particular timestamp, and for that I will specify this particular format, and the format of the file should be in that particular same, like file name underscore YYYY underscore then time, which is hour, minute, and seconds. Then we are converting it to date. Okay. Then We this is system inserted timestamp when the data is going to be inserted into the raw layer. And what is our source? So that you can take it from, which is like a file name, whole file name. So it might be a scenario on a daily basis we'll have different files like first January file, second January file, like transaction underscore year and then first January file, transaction underscore second January file, transaction underscore third January file. So we'll store those files like which record has been come from which file. So that kind of information we'll receive in this. Okay. After this, I'm appending the data to my uh, target table which is going to be created in the raw layer. Okay. Once that is done, I'm counting how many rows we have received from source and how many have been written to the target, and then I'm just writing the remarks like file has been loaded to this particular raw table. Same thing I'm doing in case of Parquet. If the format is not CSV nor Parquet, then we'll move it to invalid file format. And then let's suppose once the load is done, we need to archive those files one by one. So in the CSV files, you'll see we'll have multiple files. Let's suppose I have 3 days for file transaction underscore first January file, transaction underscore second January, and transaction underscore third January file. So I need to move all those files in the archive location. So I'm just using this ms spark utils MB and move that file from this location to archive location. And in case if that file already exists, override that particular file, because in the archive location we can have only one file with the same name. And then I'm returning row count, target count, and remarks from this particular function. And at last I'm calling that particular function inside and try and accept, so that we can also capture what are the exceptions we received in case of a load or what are the failures caused. So first we are creating our like a variable with the monitoring table name, Lakehouse monitoring table schema and monitoring table. Then for start time, which is when that pipeline has been started, because this code has been started from this cell only. Then pipeline name, which is this one, file to raw. Then run ID, which is UID, and this is number is going to be generated. So why I'm using this UID, I'll show you in future. Why I'm not using these one and like current notebook name and current notebook ID. There is some drawback of using those. I'll give an example in future. Then layer from and layer two. So layer from will be like from which particular location we are loading the data, which is like file, landing location, and our target schema, which is raw. Then I'm calling this logging function. So I'll show you how we are logging the data into the log table, pipeline monitoring table. So we are calling that particular function and how that notebook has been used inside this notebook. So at the top, you can see run dot log monitoring. Okay, so we are running the log monitoring inside this. So we are kind of getting all the code of this particular notebook inside this notebook, which is file to raw, and then we are calling this particular function. So I'll show you what exactly we are doing inside log monitoring notebook. Once that is done, like start time logging is done, then we are calling this fn file load raw load, this one. Once the load is done, then this function is returning row count, target count, and remark. And again, I'm calling this log monitoring notebook, or you can say function inside that log monitoring notebook. Once the logging is done, then our file to raw part is done. And let's suppose in between, if you receive any exception, that will go to this particular block and it will take the message and put it in inside the your log monitoring table. And now let me show you the log monitoring notebook, how it looks like. So click on workspace, then it is inside DQN log notebook. So let me click on log monitoring notebook. So this log monitoring notebook doesn't need to be connected to any lakehouse because it is going to be used inside a file to raw, raw to clean, and clean to prepare notebook. And those notebooks are already been attached to the lakehouse. So automatically this log monitoring will also be get attached to that lakehouse. So inside this log monitoring notebook, you can see we have two functions, start pipeline log and end pipeline log. When we call this start pipeline log, whatever you are passing will be returned to you inside. Here you can see in this variable, log variable. Again, we pass this log variable to end pipeline log. You can see here. Okay. And then here you can see we are taking it as a dictionary because we were returning it as dictionary, right? Like what was the system name, pipeline name. Then once we receive all the information, like this was the start information and this is the end information. Then we are converting it as a data frame and then we are inserting it inside the log monitoring table. So this is how our log monitoring works. First we pass the start information and that will be returned to that variable, this variable as a dictionary, and then again we pass this variable into the end pipeline log, and this end pipeline log function will enter the information into our log monitoring table, which is pipeline monitoring table. Okay, so this is all about log monitoring. Now I'll close this file to raw section and we'll move to raw to clean. That's it in this video. Thank you. Please like and subscribe, and in case of any suggestion on improvement or in case of any doubt, please comment.